How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be looking at immigration once again. So we've got this first video that we're going to be watching is Europe warned of horrible invasion of immigrants as crisis grows across the continent. And then we're going to be watching government yet to announce skilled migrant quota for the financial year here in Australia. So we'll watch this one second. We'll get into the juicy part about Europe. If you haven't seen what's going on in Europe, you're in for a shock on this one. Let's get into it.
But on immigration, you better get your act together, or you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe, many countries in Europe. Some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe. And the other thing, stop the windmills, killing the beauty of Europe.
Let's
but because of big
the
comment that Trump made just before that about dismissing Macron was about arriving in Europe and telling very bluntly, saying the first world leader to do so and to do so bluntly and unequivocally. According to Donald Trump, Europe is being invaded and that invasion must stop. And what he's talking about is, of course, the masses and mass illegal and legal immigration, but particularly illegal. And you only have, we've shown it here many times on Outsiders, you only have to look at the streets of Paris, the streets of Rome, the streets of Brussels, wherever you go, social cohesion has broken down, law and order is breaking down, and
it's tearing the country apart, or the continent, in fact. I did a video on Paris maybe 2 weeks ago, and how there's just streets of Paris where you would avoid if you're a tourist, even if you're a local, you would avoid them because it's just overrun by illegal immigrants, even legal immigrants as well, that are just breaking the law, like in these markets, and they're just selling, drugs and whatever else without having a stall for, obviously not the drugs, but the legal products. They didn't pay the fine or the tax or whatever, the permit to have a market stall, and they're just selling straight off the ground in the middle of the stall. And then, as you go out of those markets, then you see the drug deals, the everything, and the people that were recording it were pretty well. They had to, step back a bit because, like, the people were coming up to them, telling them to stop recording them and stop doing this, stop doing that, and they were getting harassed. And then there's literally riots in other parts of Europe as well, from foreigners, people that don't belong in Europe. Well, it's not even that they don't belong there; they weren't born there, and they've come there and they're taking over. It's crazy. If it ever happened to Australia, that's insane. At least Australia has those ocean borders. Makes it a bit harder, but
because of this mass influx of people from different cultures, from different parts of the world, and the failure to assimilate. It's very simple. Donald Trump has called it out, James, and said this invasion, his word, must stop.
Well, it's not only Donald Trump who's calling it out, it's ordinary citizens in these countries.
Yes.
In Britain, there has been a huge controversy this week because in a small town, they had been putting in migrants who'd come across the channel into these accommodation centers and giving them food, shelter, hot meals, welfare, legal aid, legal representation, while there's 1 million people waiting for housing in Britain. Britons say, well, enough of this, but it gets worse because in this one particular town, one of them, a migrant from Ethiopia, allegedly committed a sexual assault on a teenage girl there 8 days after he'd arrived in the country. Well, I mean, fine.
Yeah, that filtering system's clearly not working. More onto that, like, you can see that even happening in Australia, that, the crime has increased. Like when I was in school and stuff, you wouldn't see or hear kids going around with machetes like they are now, and the amount of kids stealing cars is insane. And when I was in school, like that wasn't even that long ago, a couple of years ago, it wasn't like that. So what's changed between now and then? I don't know. I guess you could say 600,000 people coming into the country every year. That's probably a good sign, good starting point. And you look at the housing market. What else is there for the housing market to do other than go up when there's so many people trying to move here and live here?
Allegedly, but whatever. This has gotten the locals furious, and the police and the media have decided they're going to portray anybody who protests about this as being right-wing, far-right, Nazis, all of that. And it got so bad that the British police bust in and gave police escorts to left-wing protesters to counter-protest against the locals who are furious that their town is being used as a dumping ground for people who have come across the channel. Now, we saw that vision the other week of, some French cops, putting knives into the whaler boats that were going to take them across to deflate them. But you know what? I think that we're getting past time for more kinetic solutions to this here.
But Rita, you also saw what James is referring to as an Epping as well.
Yeah.
Last week you had ordinary mums and dads out there, particularly mums who are concerned about the welfare of their daughters, who are constantly being harassed by these illegal immigrants. They had banners saying, "We are not right wing. We are not far right." This is how stupid it has become in Britain. You have the case of Lucy Connolly, I think her name is, who's in jail simply for a tweet. She's got 31 months in jail simply for a tweet which is deemed to be racist because, again, it's criticising the immigrants. This is toxic, dangerous stuff. Is Keir Starmer on top of it?
And this is why. This is why so many countries. You see it in Australia. Australia is the worst. Are banning social media accounts for younger people and whatever, so that when they do turn 18, they're not brainwashed in their quotation marks to believe that the government is doing all these bad things and obviously not in the best interest of the country itself. Like, obviously, yeah, immigration's important, but you need to be able to, the people that are coming in need to be able to assimilate and actually join the community that's already there. They can't just take over. That's not how immigration works. It's meant to add to what is already there, not destroy and invade everything.
No.
Well, he's promising to smash the gangs. His focus is the human traffickers. So it's a very easy thing for the left to focus on that as opposed to the issue, which is the fact that their border protection policies are completely failing, and they really haven't. But you can't just look at Labor, because Tories were in power there.
Absolutely.
And they did nothing about this as well. Every election they would go promising to slash not just legal migration, but legal migration, and yet record numbers would continue to come in. So that
and that's the same here in Australia. Like, you can smack and talk shit about Labor and how they're doing shit, but was Liberal really any better? Probably not. Potentially they're better at certain things, but then they're worse at other things. So all I can say is this is a first world country problem, that they're just letting these perfectly good countries go to shit. And you know what? You can talk shit about Donald Trump all you want, but at least he's not following this lead as much. Obviously the tariffs are not the best thing. He's a bit crazy with a few things, but at least he's, thinking about what might actually help the country. He hasn't let any immigrants into America. That's a start. Obviously you need migration. It's part of, when we don't have a high enough birth rate to continue growing the country, then yeah, immigration is obviously a factor that you need to supplement that. But yeah, I don't know what the solution is. Obviously Trump's pretty crazy, but Labor and Liberal here in Australia, they're not better. They're just as bad as each other.
The faces of these countries have changed. This is something we've talked about for years. Is something Douglas Murray wrote about, a decade ago, The Strange Death of Europe, maybe even longer than that. And it is the death of Europe. And that's why we are seeing countries where you would never expect the centre-right option to be in power winning, from Finland, Sweden. When you look at countries, obviously, that are revolting against this trend. And the UK itself, Reform are ahead in the polls, ahead of Labor and the Tories. And again, you would think in a party system, first past the post system, that couldn't happen, that if you had another Conservative option, it would split the vote and Labor would just keep on winning. But no, Reform right now,
Farage will get
if
there.
an
Farage
election
will be
was
in
held
number
today...
10, I predict it in 2014, and it will happen.
Yeah, it's the opposite could be true, right? Like, the reason Labor probably wants so many people to come in is because a lot of these people coming in want social benefits, and I guess Labor sort of appeals to that. So yeah, it's just a move to keep themselves in government. Now let's look at this next video. By the way, both these video links are linked below. Government yet to announce skilled migrant quota for the financial year.
Order.
It's just a week into the new parliament, but every sitting day it becomes more apparent how much has changed. The government's struggling to keep a lid on its hubris, at times failing.
Thank you for your focus on education and your focus on fairness, and also thank you for your support for the legislation to cut student debt by 20%. 20% is a big cut. It's not as big as 33%. That's how much the Australian people cut the number of Liberal MPs in the chamber at the election.
And the opposition is still stuck in the last war, with old stagers like Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack attempting to seize the limelight, leading the coalition onto slippery ground with demands to end net zero.
I know we're not in government. Chris Bowen might have a mandate to govern Australia, along with Labor, but they don't have a mandate to ruin regional Australia.
Political stunts are no substitute for real policies. And what you're seeing today is a political stunt.
MPs unwilling to give up on strong climate policy.
Higher
Coalition's troubled union.
Appointing Senator Canavan to review net zero is a bit like putting Coldplay...
Latitude, but it also risks...
necessarily lead to a happy marriage.
Bad gags aside, the coalition's impotence is a double-edged sword, giving the government enormous latitude. But it also risks triggering overconfidence, such as in immigration, which was one of the biggest fights of the election.
Do you concede they got a bit too high?
I'll make this point. There's only 2 times that more than 9 million visas have been issued in any one year in Australia. Both times, Peter Dutton was the minister.
Largely lost in that political debate is the fact that the government still hasn't announced a skilled migration quota for this financial year.
The migration program numbers are usually announced with the budget because the immigration program affects both the revenue side of the budget as well as the expenses side of the budget. This year, in the March budget, they weren't announced.
While the budget was early this year, the lack of details since from the government is highly unusual.
Like, we're in August now. It's been a while.
I cannot remember a year when the government did not announce the migration program.
Yeah, because it's going to be a huge amount. I did a video not long ago, and it's back up to 600,000 or something, or like net
before the migration program year started.
Abel Rizvi is a former senior immigration department official. He says the wave of students and working holiday makers that have flooded in after the pandemic are now applying for permanent migration, leaving Labor with difficult choices between raising overall immigration or capping partner visa numbers, including for Australian citizens who marry foreigners.
If they did manage the partner visas on a demand-driven basis and left the skill stream more or less as it is at the moment, they would be looking at a migration program of around 230,000, 240,000 for the next couple of years. Oh, that would be the highest migration program in our history by a long, long way.
Well, I'm pretty sure I saw a number that it was at 400. So
another option is to cannibalise the skilled migration program to make way for the backlog, which business fears would worsen workforce shortages across government priorities like housing, healthcare and clean energy.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at, I seen a video about Seek, and there was, you have sometimes up to 1,000 people applying for one job, and then you hear the stories of building, construction, truck driving, all those industries are struggling to find good, skilled workers because most Australians that were born here have most of them go to uni, whether they like to or not. They don't really go down the trade path anymore, which is fair enough because at the end of the day, if you're doing the trades, it's it's tough on your body. Sometimes you're fucked by 40, and then you've still got 20 to 30 years before you can retire. By the time I'm 40, it might be even 35, 40 years.
If the government were to do that, it would be a disaster. It would be a disaster for the economy as a whole. It would be a disaster for business.
A spokesman for Immigration Minister Tony Burke told 7:30 the government is managing applications in line with the level from the previous year and will have more to announce.
We would hope that the government is able to provide some clarity sooner rather than later around how the program will work this year.
Labor's obfuscation has consequences for states as well, who are still awaiting their annual migration quotas. Next month, the Productivity Commission will release a report on workforce skills in time for Jim Chalmers' Reform Roundtable, including questions about how employers access talent overseas.
You'd have to expect that we will need to bring in some labour if we're to achieve the targets that the government set.
There's no achieving those targets of building that many houses, because at the end of the day, once you bring in more people, you're going to need to build even more houses. I'm going to admit it's stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? If we stop immigration, then most likely we'll be in a recession. Is that the worst thing that could happen? Probably. Is it what sort of needs to happen? Yeah, it probably does. We probably need to have a few hard years. It's obviously not the most politically ideal. Most people won't want that to happen, but potentially that's what needs to happen. The easy path isn't always the best path, because you look at, if we keep immigrating so many people, house prices are just going to keep going ridiculously high. And yeah, like I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Like there's been a shortage of construction workers for many years now. And at the end of the day, you can't just pay people more to do the job to get like the influx of people, because then the cost of building the stuff would go up, and then we're back in that inflation period and nothing will get done. So you need people that are willing to do that job. And sadly, that probably comes from people overseas.
Of building 1.2 million houses, we're not on track to do that.
Whether it's on challenging issues of housing, immigration or the budget, Labor is benefiting from a lack of heavy scrutiny, with a few notable exceptions, such as the government's campaign claim that visits to GPs will be free for most people by the end of the decade.
Isn't it the case that Australians both need their Medicare card and their credit card to get the health care they need under Labor?
I will say, my misso went to the doctors the other day. It was $90 to go see a doctor. I'm like, holy shit, that's fucking expensive. Like, I didn't think it was that much. Like, I don't go to the doctors very often, so I can't even remember. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago that I went to the doctors. But yeah, it's expensive now to just be healthy. Yeah, it's crazy times.
The fact is, the toughest political pressure is not coming from the opposition, but from within Labor and the crossbench, particularly on Gaza.
When will Australia be prepared?
All right, I'm going to cut this video here because it looks like they're going on a tangent. But if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. No comments again. I don't know why these guys turn off comments. Like, that's where the best discussion happens, So make sure to comment on this video. I like to read them all, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.